And we are back. What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guys, Cody and Derek, back for another one, guys. And hey, in this video, we want to look ahead to some of the current players on the Indianapolis Colts roster from last year. Again, this is pre-free agency, pre the NFL draft. But we wanted to talk about some players who were on the Colts roster last year and look at the 5 guys that we believe need to take the biggest steps forward for the Indianapolis Colts. If the Colts want to be a playoff team, a Super Bowl contender, these 5 players we've identified as the 5 guys who need to step it up even further. Now, these aren't saying that these guys haven't been doing well. It's just saying these guys need to take another step, and if they do, it's going to be really good for the Indianapolis Colts. But before we get into that, if you guys are new to the channel, be sure to hit subscribe. Also, if you guys have been watching us for a while, hit that like button. Help us out. It gets us to push it out to more people, Colts fans and not Colts fans. But without further ado, let's get into it, Derek. With the first guy on the list, we got to mention the guy who just started throwing on Tuesday, second-year quarterback for the Colts, 4th overall pick for the Colts in 2023, Anthony Richardson. And Derek, I mean, we saw, even in the small sample size for Anthony Richardson, what he can become, man. I mean, 7 touchdowns in, 4 games. That's pretty stinking impressive, man, for Anthony Richardson. I mean, we saw him do it in both ways, running the football and throwing the football. And you think, man, if Anthony Richardson can take it even to another level, obviously the number one thing, man, staying healthy. No question about that. But even from his play, if he can just continue to get better week after week, and he can continue and pick up where he left off, really, from his 2023 season. I mean, we've seen it, Derek, in this league. You really live and die by your quarterback play and how dynamic your quarterback is. I mean, at the end of the day, Derek, the 49ers, we just talked about this with the Super Bowl. The 49ers, we would say, they were a more well-balanced team. They were a more talented team, but at the end of the day, what won for the Chiefs was their quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, his dynamic ability. And so the same goes for Anthony Richardson. He is so dynamic. He has so much that he can do with this team. And you feel like he's going to be 21. He's 21 right now. He's going to be 22 by the time the season starts. So still extremely young player, still learning a ton. But Derek, the potential is through the roof, sky high. I mean, this is a guy that, in the draft process, pre-draft process last year, everybody said this guy's ceiling is maybe something we've never seen before at the quarterback position. So why don't you talk to me about Anthony Richardson and just his potential and what the Colts need him to do in terms of stepping it up here moving forward into 2024?
Yeah, I mean, of course, it always comes down to your quarterback. That's the most important position in football. And if you're going to want to compete anywhere in the NFL, you need to have your quarterback playing at a high level. And of course, that is where a lot of us believe that was the key ingredient that we were missing last year for Indianapolis. A lot of people thought that had Indianapolis had Anthony Richardson last year, that you would have won 10, maybe even 11 games in comparison to your 9 that you won with Gardner Minshew, because of just how much more dynamic of a player Anthony Richardson was. And that was with Anthony Richardson being a rookie. And then on top of it, just the inexperience factor from that. And people still had such high expectations for Anthony Richardson, even throughout the year, after watching what Gardner Minshew was able to do. So, of course, if Indianapolis wants in any way, shape, or form to become a contender, then Anthony Richardson is going to have to, one, remain healthy, and then on top of it, continue to improve. Which, I mean, a lot of people have already said, Cody, just in the very limited time that we saw, they were very impressed with how quickly he became an NFL quarterback and looked the part. Didn't just act it, didn't just think about it. He was looking the part of an NFL quarterback because, I mean, remember all the things that were said about Anthony Richardson from a inexperienced, raw perspective. He really tapped into a lot of great stuff early on. and he has been able to look as if he understands and knows what he's doing out there. So we have been saying it time and time again. We feel extremely confident what Anthony Richardson can do. I don't doubt that this guy is going out there and soaking in all of the information that he can get to try to improve himself from that perspective. But yes, he has to be the number one guy to improve this year. And mainly just the improving part is just to stay healthy. As long as he's out there on the field and still improving and getting that game time experience with Shane Steichen at head coach, then you feel confident that as the season progresses, Anthony Richardson's going to get a lot better, and this team has the potential to go up against anyone.
Yep, absolutely. That's the big thing we said. He just needs experience, and he's going to have bumps in the road. Like, he's not a finished product. We know that. Far from it, definitely. But, I mean, the potential is there. We've seen it. The raw skill, the raw talent, the raw athleticism, all that stuff there for Anthony Richardson. Definitely seems like he has a good head on his shoulders as well. And he's a guy that, I think he has that mentality that all good quarterbacks do. He's obviously a fierce competitor, but he's also a guy that, doesn't get in his own head. He can move on. He's faced adversity, and he just faced another one with that injury. And so you have to believe, with everything that Anthony Richardson's gone through in his life, the things he's had to deal with, and now, the latest adversity with the injury, you got to believe this guy's going to come back. And how could you not root for him with how dynamic, how excited he is, and what he could become if he can stay healthy. So absolutely, Anthony Richardson needs to take a step forward, and that could be really the franchise changer, Derek, for the Colts if he can stay healthy. All right, let's move on to another guy that, if Anthony Richardson stays healthy, this guy will probably be one of his favorite targets, and that's Josh Downs, the wide receiver out of North Carolina. The Colts took in the third round in 2023 as well. But, Derek, he's a guy that really kind of came onto the scene immediately and made an instant impact with the Colts. He set the franchise record with receptions, and he was on pace at one point, Derek, to finish, I believe, second overall in receiving yards. And then obviously, with Gardner Minshew being out there, sometimes just not throwing him the ball as much, didn't get as many looks down the stretch. Josh Downs' stats kind of tapered off a little bit, but you do feel like, Derek, he's due for, a even better season in 2023. You really do feel that with how good he is, how dynamic he is, and just kind of the different type of receiver that he is for the Colts as opposed to some of their other guys, Michael Pittman, Alec Pierce, all of those dudes. You really do feel like Josh Downs has a capability, and we even saw it, Derek, in 2023, to be a game changer type of wide receiver. And so what the Colts need is for him to just continue to grow, continue to progress, and take it, potentially even further in 2024, and maybe, get near or even over that 1,000-yard mark in 2024. And so give me your thoughts on Josh Downs, what he needs to, get better at, or what you want to see him step up in, and kind of how that would help the Colts moving forward.
Yeah, so it was definitely a toss-up here between if we wanted to talk about Alec Pierce and Josh Downs. I think that it definitely can be made the argument that both of these guys need to take that next step in order to make sure that this offense improves. No doubt about it, but I just look at it from I have a higher expectation for Josh Downs than a Alec Pierce. I don't know if that's how you would view it, Cody, but that's why I probably would have put Josh Downs here rather than Alec Pierce, because we saw what he was able to do this last year with basically Gardner Minshew the entire year. And I mean, we know that Alec Pierce's numbers are going to improve next year, because if Anthony Richardson is throwing the football deep, then you're going to have those chances for Alec Pierce. But I think Josh Downs is another one of those key hidden weapons that in any given moment, he can be a safety blanket for Anthony Richardson and still be able to make big plays going forward. So Josh Downs has a very unique skill set, and he's got a great mind on him. We talked with him in the offseason, Cody. We really like what we see in Josh Downs, and the expectation that him and Richardson are going to be a great duo for the future for Indianapolis can go very strong as long as Josh Downs can take that next step.
Yep. And again, if he has Anthony Richardson, they build that chemistry together. I mean, Derek, he's shown already that he can be, potentially a really, really good wide receiver for the Colts for a long time, and we've seen, that before where the Colts took, a quarterback round number 1, a wide receiver in round number 3. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen that way, but we've seen that, where there's been that connection, the two guys, the same draft class, they build that bond together. So maybe that's the case here with Anthony Richardson and Josh Downs. You would definitely hope that there's a Luck to TY connection with them. That would be extremely awesome to see. But let's continue on talking about the last guy here on the offense. And Derek, this guy made our list on some players that were kind of forgotten or discarded a little bit that we think potentially could have a great year moving forward. So the name that we put here was Galani Woods. But Derek, I would just say, really, any of the tight ends, you need one of these guys to really separate themselves as that number 1 guy. Now, again, this is before the draft, so you never know if they're going to draft a guy like Brock Bowers. I don't know, or add a tight end somewhere. Who knows? But regardless of it, Galani Woods, I think, is the clear-cut number 1 when he is healthy right now, and the guy that you would say, out of all these tight ends, his ceiling is definitely the highest. And so if Galani Woods can, number 1, just like Richardson, get healthy, stay healthy, and then number 2 can put his, really his athleticism on display and pick up in certain ways where he left off in 2022, I mean, this could just be another dynamic weapon for Anthony Richardson, Shane Steichen, all these guys to be able to utilize, and just another mismatch nightmare for this Colts offense. So talk to me about Galani Woods. Talk to me about this tight end room and why the Colts need somebody. Hopefully, we think Galani Woods is the guy that most likely to do it. They need one of these guys to step it up and really take that step forward.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely needs to be a high priority that a tight end pick up the slack in this offense. I mean, it's going to be interesting. We've been talking about this whole Brock Bowers thing, whether or not Indy would get a chance to get him. And if you don't end up getting Brock Bowers in the draft, then most likely the tight end room that you had this last year is most likely going to be the same one that you're going to have this year. And you're hoping this year that Galani Woods is part of that equation as long as he is fully healthy and ready to go. And, that is a guy with a unique skill set that needs to be available for this Indianapolis Colts team, regardless of if the Colts get another tight end or not. Galani Woods is just such a unique player that he is a guy that just needs to be on the field to be able to make a difference for this Indianapolis Colts team, being as athletic as he is, as big as he is, just as inexperienced at the position as he is. That's just so much untapped potential in a guy like that, and especially with a quarterback like Anthony Richardson, who, especially in the red zone, can find a lot of great ways to get this guy the football, and even in the open field too, because for that size and that speed, I mean, there's just so many unique things that Shane Steichen can do game planning with Galani Woods. And as long as he is available, then it's definitely going to be another great weapon for Anthony Richardson, so long as he stays healthy as well.
Yep. All right, let's move it over to the defensive side. We were talking about a lot of rookies today, Derek, but this is our third rookie of the 5 guys that we're going to talk about today. This guy was taken right after Anthony Richardson in round number 2, cornerback Juju Brent. And Derek, I feel like, I don't know what your perspective is on Juju Brent, was encouraged by Juju, but also disappointed by Juju, and was more disappointed at Juju's lack of availability at times. He obviously had the wrist surgery that we knew about. That was the thing they knew when the Colts drafted him. They knew that he was probably going to miss a good chunk of the spring, but, had to deal with a couple different injuries and just wasn't on the field as much as you'd like to see. And so, number 1, again, like with the other 2 guys, that we talked about, Galani and Anthony, he's got to stay healthy, no question. But Derek, if Juju Brent can ascend himself into the number 1 cornerback role and can take a sophomore leap in a way, that will be huge for what the Colts want to do defensively. If they can truly find that number one lockdown type of corner that they feel really good about. Juju has the size, the speed, the athleticism to be that, but will he be? I guess we'll have to see. But talk to me about Juju, what you expect from him, and what you want to see for him taking the step here in year number 2.
Yeah, I mean, Juju, definitely a great option here. We have high expectations once again. I mean, Juju Brent was a guy that we felt that after this last year has that potential to be a number one corner for this team. And right now, the argument has been for the corners. We've been looking for that next guy also to add to this list. I think everyone is kind of anticipating that Juju Brent will be the other guy, but they're like, let's add another one on here so that we know that the secondary is full of great talent here. So everyone is assuming that Juju Brent is a great talent. And to have that sophomore jump would be such a huge boost to this defense that desperately needs it right now because, you know, we don't know about the futures of Kenny Moore and Julian Blackmon. We still don't 100% know who that number 2 corner is going to be on the outside for Indianapolis. And we certainly don't know how the safety depth is going to look throughout this year as well. So, I mean, this secondary is really just looking for that guy to take over in the secondary. Give us some light. Give us something that tells us we have the guy. We have one guy that can lock anyone down any Sunday afternoon or during the week, man. Like, that is exactly what we want. And hopefully Juju Brent is that guy, because if he is, then it makes it so much easier for Indianapolis to be able to fill out this roster sheet, because you know for the next 3 or 4 years that you don't have to pay him as well, give him what he's able to do. And it just really helps this Indianapolis defense elevate itself, having that true number one corner.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, no doubt that if you have Juju Brents take that next step, that's a huge relief. I mean, if you, because you've had some guys that you've betted on in the second round. You know, you had Quincy Wilson, you drafted in 2017. You had Rocky Asen, who you drafted in 2019. All in that second round. And, you know, while those guys certainly had moments, especially more probably Rock than Quincy, they never were that true number one corner. And so you really hope that Juju is that guy who can kind of break the trend there for the Colts and can really ascend into being that number one corner for Indy. And that would be huge for them and their secondary, which you mentioned a little bit in flux right now. Some questions with that. You know, obviously extremely young in a lot of areas, but if Juju could take that next step, that would be massive for this Colts defense. All right, last guy here on the list. And Derek, I know we talked about, you know, potentially 2 guys here, kind of similar to the, you know, Alec Pierce, Josh Downs type of thing. I think for me, Derek, between Kwity Paye and Dio Dengo, I'm going to put Dio Dengo on this list for the simple fact that I personally don't believe Dio is anywhere near his ceiling. I truly believe that the flashes that we saw, there's so much more to be tapped into there. And I do believe a guy like Charlie Partridge, who's had some history, you know, getting a lot out of his defensive linemen, I truly think he can be a guy that can unlock that next level of Dio. Where Kwity, yeah, okay, maybe there is still more, but it does feel like, and I don't know what your opinion on this, Derek, is, but it feels like Quity's nearer to his ceiling than Dio is. I really do believe that. And so that, I think, is what, in my mind, edges it out a little bit in favor of Dio Dengo. I mean, we talk about the measurables for Dio. I mean, just an absolute freak when it comes to so many different measurables for him. And it would have been a first-round pick if it hadn't been for that Achilles injury. So talk to me about Dio Dengo and what you believe he can potentially become in 2024 with this new defensive line coach, and what he needs to do in 2024, I guess, to, you know, make you feel confident in this defensive line.
Like you said, the biggest component to this is we believe that there is more to unlock for Dio Dengo than what we have seen for Kwity Paye. And I mean, I really think that Dio has another part to get to his ceiling, because he had the same number of sacks as Kwity, while at the same time, you know, playing about 15% less snaps. Just imagine if he would have gotten a few more chances to be on the field to rush the quarterback, right? Dio's just got such a unique thing going for him. He's a guy that can take over in any situation, it feels like. And it really is going to be interesting to see how him and the defensive line coach mold. We'll have to see how they kind of balance it out. Maybe being more gap responsible could be a great thing for Dio. It just depends on how they're going to do it. But like you said, when it came to the aspect of figuring out whether it needs to be Quiddy or Dio, I just think if you're trying to find another guy that could potentially get you a 10-sack season, Dio, I feel like, has the higher ability to do so, just be that more pure pass rusher that Indianapolis is searching for. Because, like you said, I'm not high on the Quiddy train anymore. I feel like we've kind of seen to where he taps out at. So I would love to see Dio Dengo take that next step, and hoping that if him and Ebukam can repeat and maybe even elevate what they did from last year, then you could have a dynamic duo of edge guys who maybe aren't elite edge guys, but are really good edge guys that can consistently get pressure on the quarterback, because that's what Indy desperately needs right now.
Yeah. So, guys, that'll do it for our 5 Colts who need to take a step forward in 2024. Let us know your thoughts on these players. Is there anybody else that you would throw on this list as well? Let us know all those things in the comments below. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Like I said at the beginning of the video, be sure to hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe. All that good stuff. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We greatly appreciate it. And as always, guys, go Colts.